Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, following our MC, we see him talking about how he was bullied in middle school, causing him to shut himself away from the outside world. One day whilst on his phone, our MC is engulfed by a huge flash of light, only to appear in front of a goddess, who congratulates him as he's been selected to be reincarnated. Realizing he had probably passed away in his room, he hears that the goddess warns him that the new world only cares about magic prowess, so she states she'll give him a little boost. Hearing such an amazing offer, our MC reckons that he should try to replicate his shut-in life in this new world, striving to spend all day watching anime and playing games. Just like that, our MC is reincarnated as a baby, spotting a king calling out to his wife Giselet, happy to see that their child is a boy, and has a royal insignia as a birthmark. Deducing that his parents are royalty, our MC gets excited for the easy life, but notices that the king is now having our MC's potential gauged through a crystal ball. Stating that he himself is of pure royal blood, and his wife is a powerful adventurer, the king expects his son to have a maximum mana level cap of at least 40 or 50, but is disappointed when the orb reveals our MC's maximum mana level is 2. On top of that, the orb states that our MC has no elemental affinities, and can only use barrier magic, disappointing the king and queen. Knowing that they'll be a laughing stock among other nobles, the king and queen decide to fake their child's death, telling everyone their son died at childbirth, but both are upset that they had already given our MC the name of Reinhardt. Shocked that his parents don't want him, our MC hears the king order his servants to dispose of the child in a nearby forest, helpless to do anything. Cutting to the goddess that reincarnated him, she chats with another god, admitting that she gave our MC too high of a level and that the orb couldn't read our MC's true level of 1002, plus she forgot to give him any elemental affinities. Later that night, we see our MC curled up in a blanket, struggling to even move with his body. Testing out his barrier magic, our MC imagines a cube, easily conjuring up a cubic barrier. Testing out different colors and shapes, our MC wonders if he can encase himself with a cube, only to be amazed when he manages to lift himself up with his barrier magic. Happy to know he can at least run away from danger, our MC is caught off guard when a monster sneaks up on him, barely able to erect his barrier before being devoured. Surprised that his barrier is so sturdy, our MC pelts the monster with some cubic barriers, but when he sees that the cubes aren't doing anything, he follows up by tossing some trees at the monster. With the monster still not yielding, our MC picks up a huge chunk of land with his barrier, preparing to squash the monster, but suddenly hears the creature speak. Stopping to chat, our MC refuses to take the name Reinhardt, introducing himself as Haruto, only to see the creature apologize, only wanting to replenish its mana by devouring him. Knowing that his body is still too young to speak, Haruto encases his vocal cords with a barrier, able to vibrate them to emanate speech. Shocked that a baby is speaking, the creature wonders who our Haruto is, prompting Haruto to introduce himself, telling the creature that he had been abandoned. Sensing huge amounts of mana emanating from our MC, the creature urgently asks if Haruto is the Demon King reincarnated. Not wanting the creature to know he was a jobless shut-in, Haruto claims the title of the Demon King, scaring the creature as it offers its life to Haruto. Seeing the creature being dramatic, Haruto states that he'll leave it alive, as long as it doesn't try to attack him. Grateful to be spared, the creature introduces itself as a Flame Fenrir, but not wanting to chat any longer, Haruto calls the Flame Fenrir, Flay, heading off. Stopping Haruto, Flay states that since Haruto has given it a name, they both now formed a master and slave pact. Not knowing what he had done, Haruto begins to fall unconscious, having not been fed anything since birth. Willing to do anything for her master, Flay transforms into a human form but realizes that she has no clothes, forcing Haruto to cover her with his barrier spell. Apologizing for her rudeness, she wonders what she should feed Haruto, but suddenly hears someone approaching from afar. Wanting to kill the stranger, Flay is instructed to peacefully settle any disputes first, casting a barrier that'll help him speak with her from afar. Confronting a man, Flay demands to know why he's here, learning that the man is a relative of Haruto's parents, here to rescue the abandoned child. Accusing the man of using a baby for ulterior motives, Flay is proven wrong when the man reveals that he has brought breast milk for Haruto, who is excited to finally consume something. Still not believing the man, Flay demands to know the man's true motives, learning that the man had lost his own child in the past, wanting to make up for it with Haruto. Crying at such a tragic backstory, Flay reasons that this man is more qualified to raise her master, but states that she'll only allow him to raise her master as long as she's his personal attendant. With both Flay and the man agreeing, we see the man help destroy Haruto's basket, faking the baby's death. Moving 9 years forward, Haruto is living under the Margrave Gold family, with his mother, father and younger sister Char. Happy to be with such a loving family, Haruto notes how Char is very shy around him, catching the eye of Flay, who tells the two to grow closer somehow. Seeing that Char is very close with Flay, Haruto gets jealous, watching as Char and Flay play together outside. Seeing Haruto staring blankly at Char and Flay playing, Haruto's mother cheers Haruto up, reasoning that Char simply is shy and doesn't know how to act around boys that are the same age as her. Hearing this, Haruto wonders if Char knows that he is a creep reincarnated in a young boy's body, but hears his mother remind Haruto that he'll eventually inherit their wealth and suggest that Haruto play with Char every once in a while, instead of locking himself in his room. Returning to his room, Haruto thinks about running away to live his own independent life, but knows that Flay would be devastated, and his family would feel betrayed. Haruto reveals that whilst he had locked himself away, he had crafted this robot copy of himself, but sadly the robot can't speak just yet. Wondering if he can create robot copies of others, he's suddenly called by his father. Out in the yard, his father states that he'll be training Haruto on how to wield a sword, scared that Haruto is wasting his life away, believing that Haruto has low mana levels. Telling his father about his studies into ancient magic, his father is surprised to hear a unique interest, but still wants to see if Haruto has potential as a swordsman. Standing off against one another, Haruto senses his father's potent aura, having been a warrior his entire life, given the title of Earth-Shattering Warhammer. Encasing himself with a barrier, Haruto swiftly leaps towards his father, swinging his wooden sword down, only for his father to dodge as his sword snaps in half, having collided with the ground. Shocked, his father spots a massive hole from where Haruto's sword landed, taking a battle stance to gauge Haruto's skills. Swinging his blade at Haruto, his father watches as Haruto effortlessly evades his strike, knowing that only level 30 and above warriors can dodge a strike like that. Thinking back, Haruto had tried to measure his mana level several times in the past, but no changes in his level ever appeared. Instead, he believed that the goddess had, in exchange for the low mana level, gave him unlimited potential with barrier magic. Knowing that his son still has much to learn, Haruto's father continues to train RMC, all whilst Char watches. That night, Haruto's father chats with his wife, whilst Char lays on her mother's lap. Revealing that Haruto has crazy skills, Haruto's father wonders if he must be a demon's offspring, as there have been tales of the royal family experimenting with demons. Refusing to believe such a thing, Haruto's mother chalks it up to be the royal insignia exhibiting strange traits, explaining why a demon beast like Flay is so close to Haruto. Nonetheless, both Haruto's mother and father state that they'll continue to raise Haruto just like a normal child, not knowing that Char is listening in on everything. Laying in bed, Haruto notes how his father has been very busy lately, happy that he gets to skip sword training. Hearing men screaming outside, Haruto uses barrier's magic to track down the source of the noise, shocked to see so many people injured. Confronting his father, Haruto sees his father shooken up, revealing that he and his men had set out to hunt down some thieves terrorizing his land. But having underestimated the thieves, their forces were ambushed, resulting in his men being severely injured, all because of his rash decisions. Seeing his father on the brink of breaking down, Haruto returns to his room, but before he does, he hears Flay insulting his father, ordering her to be silent, only to heal all of the wounded soldiers. That night, Flay waits outside Haruto's room, waiting for Haruto to wake up, apologizing for insulting Haruto's father. Chatting privately outside, Haruto begins scanning the surrounding area with his barrier magic, spotting several men camped nearby, realizing that the men are normal bandits and knights. Finding it suspicious that such weak men were able to severely injure his father's forces, Haruto suspects that there is a spy amongst their ranks. Knowing that he should solve this conflict quickly, Haruto and Flay fly towards the bandits, all whilst Char watches. Cutting to the leader of the bandits, The leader is seen celebrating their surprise attack on Haruto's father, sad that they weren't able to eliminate the infamous earth-shattering Warhammer warrior once and for all. Suddenly the men spot Haruto and Flay, readying their blades, only to be frozen in place by Haruto. When one of the men threatens Haruto, Haruto blows the man into a nearby wall, demanding the remaining men to answer his questions. Interrogating the men, Haruto learns that the men are knights from the Empire, a neighboring kingdom sent to cause mayhem. Realizing that they probably got help, Haruto realizes that someone with equal or greater influence must be after his father's land. With nothing left to ask the men, Haruto orders Flay to burn down the entire camp, prompting Flay to kill every single person in her vicinity. As Haruto and Flay walk through the woods, Haruto states that he should learn about the politics surrounding this world, but he'll first anonymously update his father on what he just learned. The next morning, Haruto's father, with Char on his lap, learns that the bandits have been either killed or captured, worried that the Empire is up to no good. Asking her father who could have slayed all the bandits, Haruto's father states that the person must be cold, calculative and able to wield fire magic. Deducing that it was Flay, Haruto's father brushes it off as Flay accidentally stumbles upon them that night whilst out hunting. Remembering that she saw Haruto and Flay leaving the castle that night, Char leaves her father's room, rushing to Flay, demanding to know who Haruto really is. Wondering if Char had hit her head, Char states that last night she had seen Haruto and Flay leave the castle, but when she entered his room, she saw her brother sleeping in bed, but this time she couldn't sense his potent mana. Impressed that Char can sense Haruto's overwhelming mana pool, Flay states that Haruto is by far the strongest being that has ever existed, easily surpassing her own powers. But Flay stops there, stating that she can't reveal Haruto's true identity, and that Char should be proud to be related to Haruto. That evening, Flay tells Haruto about Char getting more suspicious about who Haruto truly is, prompting Haruto to begin surveying Char's every move. That night as Haruto heads to the bathroom, he finds it adorable that Char is tailing him, but when he offers to have a chat, Char simply runs away. As several days pass, Char is seen continuously watching over Haruto's actions, during his training, mealtimes and throughout his day. One day, as Haruto has breakfast with the family, he learns that his mother and Char are leaving to attend a festival, one that happens every year. Just in case, Haruto suggests that they take Flay with them, but realizes he hasn't seen Flay in a while, having sent Flay out to intimidate the surrounding monsters to not attack any nearby towns or villages. Seeing Char still cautious of him during dinner, Haruto's mother and Char head out for the festival. As Haruto returns to his room to lay on his bed, he occasionally checks up on them. Suddenly Haruto gets an alert. Cutting to Haruto's mother and Char, we see they have been ambushed by bandits, barely able to escape, as the knights stay back to stall the bandits. Seeing some bandits firing magic projectiles towards them, Haruto's mother is forced to expend mana, casting a barrier to block the incoming projectiles, but fails to block all but one. As Haruto's mother gets injured from a projectile, we see Haruto communicating with Char, asking her to guide their mother deep into the forest. Seeing as there is no other option, Haruto's mother continues to follow Char's directions, wondering who could be helping them to escape. As they reach a cliff, Haruto's mother is instructed to jump, realizing that she should cushion their fall with her magic. Reaching a moss cave, Haruto's mother asks that Char remain in this cave, as she will go find help, stating a hero of justice will surely save them. Scared that her mother won't return, Char begins to break down, but knows finding help is the only option. As Haruto's mother leaves the cave, she realizes the entrance to the cave had been covered by illusionary magic, wondering who is helping them. Just then the bandits catch up, spotting Haruto's mother, but reasons that Char is not too far from here. Knowing that if she gets captured, she'll be tortured, Haruto's mother pulls out a dagger, willing to end her own life. It means Char's location won't be revealed. Before Haruto's mother can end her own life, Haruto destroys his mother's dagger, knocking her out, only to catch her. Pissed that the bandits had forced his mother to attempt to take her own life, Haruto roars, blasting all the bandits back, knocking every single one out. Back in the cave, Char begs for help to arrive, only to sense a familiar potent aura approaching, telling Char that her mother is safe and that help will arrive soon. Recognizing the potent aura, Char comes out from her hiding spot, seeing Haruto at the entrance of the cave. Having not expected Char to come out of hiding, Haruto greets Char, only for her to ask if Haruto is the hero of justice, assigned to save them. Wondering where Char could have gotten these ideas from, he learns that his mother had stated that a hero of justice would come save them, therefore Haruto must be the hero they were waiting for. Replying that he is indeed a hero of justice, Haruto asks that Char keep his powers a secret, which makes Char excited as she is being entrusted with keeping a huge secret. That night, Haruto and his father learn that Char and Haruto's mother are now being escorted by Flay, and that all the knights that were injured in the ambush have all been miraculously healed. Wanting to know Haruto's opinion on the whole situation, Haruto states that he has no idea who could be helping them, attempting to change topics. With his father refusing to change topics, Haruto reasons that it would be the best time to hint at the fact that there must be a traitor allowing so many bandits to enter his father's domain without them knowing. Satisfied that his father now suspects people close to him, Haruto hears his father mention a dangerous lady, but before he can ask about this lady, Char, Haruto's mother and Flay return home. Having bursted through the door, Char leaps onto Haruto, surprising everyone as they wonder when Char and Haruto have gotten so close. Nonetheless, Haruto's parents are happy to see that their two children have grown so close, but Flay is clearly jealous that Char is being too touchy with her master. Several days later, Char has been constantly visiting Haruto's room, not knocking annoying him a bit. But since she's too adorable, he prefers this over her avoiding him. Asking what Haruto is working on, Char learns Haruto is experimenting with some surveillance magic. Magic Haruto is forced to categorize as ancient magic as he believes no one would know the spell. Char offhandedly mentioned that she had seen a similar spell in their home's library, a location he didn't know existed. Swiftly retrieving several books, Char sits down with Haruto, skimming the books and learning that ancient magic had been lost to history and instead elemental magic is more common in the modern day. Wondering if his barrier magic is ancient magic, as it is not considered elemental magic, he's happy to see Char so interested in learning the history of ancient spells, surprised she has been reading books with the help of Flay and her mother. Seeing as this is the perfect bonding time, Char sits on Haruto's lap, asking Haruto to begin reading the books to her. Learning that gods can travel between worlds, Haruto mentions how this was a common concept in the anime that he watched, piquing Char's interest. Attempting to explain the concept of colored frames, moving frames and animation to Char, Haruto gets scared that he may have freaked out Char with these otherworldly concepts, but instead is surprised to see Char now interested in this anime. Haruto speaks off. Grateful to have such an adorable sister, Haruto spends 2 weeks setting up a computer and invents his own internet system in this world. Setting up an account for Char to watch anime, Char is instantly hooked on the flashy colors and animations, but has issues understanding the Japanese language. Spending time teaching her Japanese, Haruto is amazed with Char's learning rate, able to understand basic Japanese concepts on the computer. Another 2 weeks pass, and Char has begun exploring the zombie genre, making Haruto wonder if Char is truly a genius. Knowing that he should restrict her screen time, Haruto sees Char so energetic, but he puts his foot down, stating that she is allowed to have 3 hours of screen time every day only. That night, Char begins falling asleep at the dinner table, prompting her mother to ask what she's been doing lately. When Char tells her parents that she's been learning ancient magic with Haruto, her mother gets super excited, asking Char and Haruto to keep up the good work. Before they head to sleep, Char and Haruto take a bath, only to part ways for the night. Before Haruto falls asleep, he notices Char sharing his bed, spotting his mother watching over them, so happy to see her children growing so close. The next morning, the family gathered to see Haruto's father off, heading to track down the cause for the increase in bandits on his land. Returning to Haruto's room, Char is seen sad, not wanting her father to get hurt, but Haruto reassures her that their father is very strong. Still, Char gets an idea. Using her adorable face, she convinces Haruto to follow their father for safety. Wanting to impress Char, Haruto transforms like the people in the anime Char watches, impressing his little sister. Since it'll be dangerous, Haruto orders Char to stay put, but gives her a screen to watch the action. Heading out, Haruto surveys the area, spotting some bandits in a nearby cave, immediately erecting a barrier to trap them in the cave. Since his sister is watching, he heads to the location, announcing himself as the hero of justice, only to swiftly knock out the bandits. Before he can flee the scene, Haruto spots his father and his men arriving, wanting to know if this masked man defeated these bandits. Having not picked a name yet, Haruto reveals that he is the hero of justice, but before Haruto's father can thank him for saving his wife and daughter, Haruto flies off. Returning completely exhausted, Haruto is forced to keep this edgy persona, as he wants to impress Char. Whilst transformed, Haruto keeps up the persona, but at the same time he has improved his robots. Asking the robot basic questions, Haruto gets annoyed by the robot's behavior, but realizes that Char is in the room with them. Having been resting in Haruto's bed, Char gets confused who the real Haruto is, but is interrupted when Haruto and Char are called to greet some guests. Heading outside, a prince and a princess are seen visiting, but the prince is clearly disgusted at Haruto's father's dirty fields, prompting the princess to ask the prince to be quiet. Personally greeting Princess Marianne and Prince Laius, Laius immediately acts bratty, demanding Haruto's father to bow more deeply. Hearing her brother being so disrespectful, Marianne asks that Laius be nicer, but Laius reminds Marianne that he is the next ruler of this country and that she is simply a political tool. Seeing the cocky prince, Haruto glares at Laius, but is caught staring. Feeling insulted, Laius refuses to allow a level 2 adopted child disrespect him, demanding to duel Haruto. With both Laius and Haruto facing off with wooden swords, Haruto scans Prince Laius's stats, realizing that the prince is currently level 9 out of a max level of 40, noting how he's heard the strongest ever known mage had a max level of 77. Checking his father and the princess, he realizes that a max level of 40 is quite impressive, compared to his father's max level of 32 and Princess Marianne's max level of 33. Spotting Laius rushing towards him, Haruto evades the prince's advances, but realizes he should get hit a couple times to gauge the Prince Laius' strength. Casting a barrier around himself, Haruto allows himself to get pummeled, but when Laius orders him to fight back, Haruto disappears, appearing behind Laius, easily knocking him down. Pissed, Laius tries to fight back, but is tripped over continuously, making Marianne wonder if Haruto is truly level 2. Answering the princess's question, Haruto's father says he personally doesn't know the reason for Haruto's exceptional skills, but right at that moment, Prince Laius casts a fireball at Haruto. Reacting just in time, Haruto projects a barrier in front of him, absorbing all incoming fireballs. But since Haruto's barriers are invisible, the prince demands to know what is happening, refusing to believe that a level 2 like Haruto is capable of advanced absorption magic. Annoyed that he's being questioned, Haruto retrieves the absorbed fireballs, unleashing them as a burst, bringing the cocky Prince Laius to his knees, finally admitting defeat. With the duel over, Princess Marianne apologizes for her younger brother's actions, but Haruto says it's fine, heading back to his room. Realizing that Prince Laius and Princess knew of his maximum level being 2, he wonders if his parents that abandoned him in the forest had leaked his level. Late at night, Char is using Haruto's surveillance magic, spotting some suspicious people in a nearby forest. Just then, Flay interrupts, having heard from Char that Haruto has been fighting bad guys himself, offering to join him for his upcoming journey. Not wanting Flay to make things more complicated, Haruto asks about the tasks he's assigned her, but Flay states that she had finished all the yard work she had been assigned and had scared off the monsters approaching nearby villagers. Seeing that Flay and Haruto will be working together, Char begins thinking about all sorts of adventures, with Flay as Haruto's sidekick. Playing along, Flay states that she'll devote herself to Haruto and fulfill Char's ideas, but when Haruto asks Flay to drop the act, Flay scolds Haruto for not thinking about Char's imagination. Before Haruto and Flay head out, Haruto orders Flay to keep the violence to a minimum, especially with Char watching over them. Cutting to the suspicious people, we hear them bragging about the goods they had stolen, excited about the food they'll get to buy. Suddenly, Haruto appears from the darkness in his transformed form, introducing himself as the Black Knight. Right after, Flay follows after Haruto, introducing herself as the Crimson Knight. Conjuring a flame in her palm, Flay tosses a fireball towards the men, burning the men alive, all whilst Haruto orders Flay to not act so violently. Stopping Flay's flames, Haruto casts a barrier around the men, protecting them for the time being, only to appear beside Flay, ordering her to halt all attacks. Obeying Haruto's orders, Flay holds back from finishing off the men, watching as Haruto ties up the men. Returning to his room, Haruto is clearly exhausted, but hears Char amazed by Flay and Haruto's teamwork. Thanking the little miss, Flay states that she couldn't show off all of her power today, but next time she will. As the girls continue to chat, Haruto states that he's conflicted between working with Flay or not, as Flay is uncontrollable at times, but with Flay, Char is happy. Cutting elsewhere, we see that Prince Laius is still embarrassed, suffering from defeat from a nobody like Haruto. Hearing his attendant calling him, he asks his attendant to enter, reminded that he must prepare for a banquet very soon. As Laius dresses up, his attendant proposes that he invite Char to his farmland tour tomorrow, but when Laius refuses, his attendant gets serious, forcing Laius to accept the proposal. Back with Haruto, we see that Char had returned from the same banquet with Haruto's clone, serving Haruto some high-quality food from the banquet. Haruto's clone gets mad that he was forced to socialize, leaping into bed exhausted, but Haruto reassures his clone that he'll personally be attending the farmland tour tomorrow. Hearing this, Char mentions how Prince Laius had invited her to the farmland tour as well, weirding Haruto out. That night, Haruto makes preparations for the farmland tour tomorrow, since Char is coming along. First he checks the tour route, spotting some hooded men gathered around a ritual circle. Immediately heading out, Haruto transforms, appearing beside the men, asking if they have permission from his father, Gold Zenfis, to be casting a spell here. Assuming that Haruto is an enemy, the hooded men all prepare spells to fire at Haruto, but Haruto reacts fast, interrupting the hooded men's incantations and blasting all the men away. Seeing a single hooded man still conscious, Haruto watches as the man uses the ritual circle to summon skeleton knights. Creeped out by the skeletons, Haruto equips a sword, destroying the skeletons in a single swing, but just like in the games he played, the skeletons refuse to die. With the hooded men calling all the skeletons to pile on Haruto, Haruto erects a cubic barrier around himself, blowing the skeletons away, only to spot a red crystal in the skeleton's chest. Ordering his skeletons to continue attacking Haruto, the hooded men are terrified to see the skeletons are now attacking them, forcing one of them to summon a golem, destroying the skeletons. Turning its attention to Haruto, the golem swings at Haruto's barrier, managing to send Haruto flying back into a tree. Having underestimated the golem, Haruto spots the same red crystal in the golem's chest, leaping into the air to get a better angle. Conjuring a spike, Haruto tosses the spike directly at the golem's crystal, which absorbs the spike, shutting the golem down temporarily. When the golem wakes up, it turns on the hooded men too, making the hooded men wonder the cause of this. Appearing behind the hooded men, Haruto explained that he had intended to shatter the crystal cores of both the skeletons and the golem, but instead it seemed that the projectile he created with his magic overrode the crystal cores, making Haruto the new master of the skeletons and golem. Tying up the hooded men with his new summons, Haruto attempts to interrogate the leader of the hooded men, but realizes that his threats aren't working. Coming up with an idea, Haruto makes the leader watch as his men are buried alive, finally able to get the leader to reveal that he is the part of the personal summoner unit of the queen in a neighboring kingdom. Wondering why the hooded men are even here, the leader reveals that they had planned to summon creatures to attack Char tomorrow whilst they were on their farmland tour. Pissed that they are targeting his sister, Haruto demands to know the reason, learning that the queen is aware of Char's maximum potential, fearing that Char would be able to sway politics in her favor in the future with her overwhelming power. Thinking rationally for a second, Haruto deduces that the only queen that would be after his father, mother in Char's life is his biological mother. Pissed at this woman's disgusting intentions, Haruto vows to protect his family, plotting a plan to deal with the queen's schemes. The next morning, Haruto, Char, Laius and Marianne all sit in a carriage. Seeing Laius in a grumpy mood, Char attempts to cheer Laius up, stating that he should be proud of losing to Haruto, but this only gets him more mad. Demanding to know how Haruto was so physically skilled during their duel, Haruto reveals that he can perform any modifications to his physical body whenever, surprising Laius and Marianne. Laius wonders if Haruto is a returned demon, prompting Char to explain that a returned demon is born when a demon has a child with a human. These returned demons have extraordinary physical prowess and large mana pools, but the only difference between Haruto and a returned demon is that Haruto doesn't have horns or wings. Just then, the carriage stops, having arrived at a massive wheat field, right before sundown. With Laius and Marianne watching over Char as she explores the field, Haruto asks to have a word with his father. Sitting down, Haruto asks what his father would do if Char were to be attacked, prompting Haruto's father to reveal that he had gotten a letter last night from the mysterious Black Knight, warning him that the queen is after Char's life. Sadly, Haruto's father can't do anything, since the death of the queen means that there would be a power struggle for the throne between nobles. Haruto's father reveals that Haruto's biological father, King Jilk, fell from power long ago. Haruto's father states that before Haruto was born, King Jilk and Queen Giselit were part of the army that defeated the Demon King. Having been the one to personally decapitate the Demon King herself, Giselit was hailed as a hero, given the title Flash Princess, even marrying King Jilk. Ever since then they had 3 children, Prince Laius, Princess Marianne and Haruto. But there are rumors that Queen Giselit is trying to take the kingdom for herself. Knowing that he himself is not suited to take the throne, Haruto's father mentions that the only way to overthrow the queen is to have someone more powerful defeat her, hinting at the fact that he plans on waiting for Char to be old enough before involving her in politics. Haruto's father states that he knows Char is a genius, even having the potential to outgrow the Flash Princess Giselit herself. Until then, Haruto's father asks that Haruto watch over her. As Flay and Haruto walk through the field, Flay offers to bring Haruto the queen's head, but Haruto states that they must make sure Char grows up safely first, only then will he personally slay his biological mother. Cutting to Queen Giselit, she sits upon her throne menacingly sipping on wine, pissed to hear reports of a mysterious masked man, by the name of the Black Knight, thwarting her attempts at slaying Char. Disappointed at her servants, Giselit dumps a glass of wine on her servants, thinking that Char is the only person that will surpass herself in the future. Retrieving the holy sword she had used to slay the Demon King, Giselit wonders if she herself should hunt down this Black Knight, but everyone suddenly hears a voice. As Giselit's slaves ready their blades to protect Giselit, mysterious barriers suddenly knock them out, prompting Haruto as the Black Knight to reveal himself. Demanding to know how Haruto had made his way to her location, Haruto laughs at the queen's barrier magic, meant to keep out intruders. Happy that she doesn't have to search for the Black Knight, Giselit swiftly casts a water spell, surrounding Haruto in a sphere of water. As Haruto begins to drown, the queen gets joyful at Haruto's pain, but spots Haruto projecting himself out of her water sphere, with his barrier magic. Whilst in midair, Haruto is forced to erect a barrier to stop incoming ice magic from Giselit, but is forced to tank a fire spell Giselit had simultaneously casted. Falling to his knees, Haruto is surprised that Giselit not only is a master swordsman, but also has water, ice and fire elemental affinity. Smirking at Haruto's jealousy, Giselit realizes that Haruto is not injured whatsoever, wondering how capable the Black Knight is. Seeing Haruto raise his hand, Giselit is suddenly stunned to see a beam of light fly towards her, barely able to block it, shocked that she didn't sense any incantation from Haruto. Hearing Haruto state that he's now going to take the fight seriously, Giselit instinctively casts her barrier magic, managing to block hundreds of projectiles from Haruto. Seeing Haruto unfazed with casting so many projectiles, she states that Haruto has a far greater mana pool than the Demon King she fought. Knowing that keeping her barrier up takes up huge amounts of mana, Giselit temporarily drops her barriers, rushing in with her holy sword, but Haruto had anticipated this, thwarting her attempts. As they both exchange blows, Giselit leaps onto Haruto, mounting him and declaring that she has personally made sure that she's the strongest in the world. Having now gauged Giselit's maximum potential, Haruto slashes and disarms Giselit, administering his punishment, a collar for the once Flash Queen. Attempting to rip off the collar, Giselit is warned to not, as the collar will decapitate her if she tries to remove it. Giving Giselit a warning, Haruto states that she is not to come near the Zenfis family or else he'll make sure that he doesn't spare Giselit next time. As Haruto takes his leave, Giselit realizes that she's now under the service of another being, laughing maniacally alone, as she realizes she's no longer the strongest. Meeting up with Flay, Flay congratulates Haruto's victory over the Flash Queen Giselit, ensuring Char and his family's safety for the time being. Moving 5 years forward in time, whilst watching Flay and Char play in the snow, Haruto narrates how it's been a peaceful 5 years, with no sighting of the Queen Giselot scheming against his family. Wishing he had stayed in his room, Haruto watches as Flay constructs a massive snow castle, wondering if Flay is cold in her maid outfit. Proudly whilst shivering, Flay states that since this was the first outfit Haruto had gifted her, she will gladly wear it forever. Ignoring Flay, Haruto crafts some warm clothes for Flay, telling Flay that they should maintain a healthy relationship and to state any discomforts she has with him. Suddenly coming up with an idea, Char states that she had been thinking of a special attack Haruto can use whilst in the snow. Reluctantly listening to Char's suggestion, Haruto walks a couple steps away from Char and Flay, embarrassingly announcing a new spell incantation. Haruto conjures a mini tornado in his palm. Firing the tornado into the snow, Haruto impresses Flay and Char, as he has torn a massive crater into the ground. Jumping into Haruto's arms, Char is so happy to have an amazing brother, which Haruto notes embarrassing himself to please Char isn't so bad. Just then, Haruto's parents arrive, wondering who could have created the massive crater, but Haruto creates a Black Knight clone blaming the clone, and managing to hide his power from his parents. As Flay, Char and Haruto's mother begin building snow sculptures, Haruto has a chat with his father, learning that his father hasn't heard anything regarding Queen Giselot's schemes. Plus there are rumors that Queen Giselot has been enslaved, as she has been seen with a slave collar around her neck. As his father thinks about who would have enslaved the almighty Flash Queen Giselot, Haruto quietly sneaks off, as his job of keeping Char safe is basically complete. But before he can leave, his father states that Haruto will be joining the Royal Capital School these coming weeks, apologizing to Haruto as there are complicated factors that Haruto's father couldn't refuse. Wallowing in despair, Haruto deems to resolve these complicated factors, if it means he'll finally get to live the shut-in life he had always wanted. Back in Haruto's father's office, Haruto attempts to talk his way out of enrolling, but Haruto's father reveals a personal invitation letter from the king, suggesting Haruto to enroll. Haruto's father speculates that King Jilk was influenced by his daughter, Princess Marianne, who has taken a liking to Haruto. On top of that, Prince Laius will be skipping grades to join Haruto in the same grade, meaning that Haruto will inevitably be forced to spend time with Laius. Haruto's father warns Haruto to be careful, since he suspects that Queen Giselot might be using Princess Marianne to enact her schemes from the shadows, asking Haruto to investigate this. Thinking about how much his father has done for him, Haruto agrees to attend the school, if it means that he'll make his father proud. Before Haruto leaves, he is reminded to take an attendant with him, to help with living on campus. Knowing that he shouldn't bring Flay, Haruto is stumped, having no other attendants to choose from. Hearing her son considering attendants, Haruto's mother suggests herself, having eavesdropped on their conversation, but Haruto is forced to reject his mother's offer. Returning to his room, Haruto chats with his robot clones, scheming ways to get expelled. Since his robot clone can't use magic, Haruto suggests his clone replaces him at the school, and intentionally gets expelled. But Haruto notes that he has to get expelled all whilst preserving his family name. Coming up with an idea, Haruto suggests his clone start a fight with other students, but his clone begins to protest, stating that he can't do anything against magical students. As a compromise, Haruto promises to permanently cast a magic barrier around his clone to protect him, whilst he impersonates him at school. Several days have passed, and Haruto is spending time in a log hut that he had secretly built, having intended to spend an isolated life here when all his duties have been completed. Just then, Flay and Char arrive, donning her magic girl outfit from the anime she's been watching. Char states that she was told off for clinging and spending too much time with Haruto, but Haruto suggests that he can sneak her in and out of his room with teleportation magic. Trying it with objects first, Flay and Char are amazed as Haruto is able to create 2 portals to simulate teleportation, but Haruto states that he has never tried with living objects before. With Flay suggesting using Haruto's clone, Haruto creates a portal to his clone who is chilling in his room, ordering his clone to try out the portal. When his clone refuses, Flay gets pissed for refusing her master, personally hopping through the portal and tossing the clone through the portal. With that, Haruto confirms that he can now teleport a living or non-living object, but he still needs to find an attendant. With Flay cleaning up the windows of the hut, Char enjoying some anime and Haruto gaming, Haruto suddenly blurts out that he needs to find an attendant for school. Seeing Flay and Char get curious at what he means by an attendant, Haruto pardons himself, not wanting to tell the girls that he's looking for an attendant to go to school with. Walking down the bank along a river, Haruto notes how he needs to keep his search a secret from the girls, knowing that he has only 3 months left to find an attendant. Suddenly hearing something in the nearby forest, Haruto heads down a path in the forest, spotting his skeleton summons building homes. Upon seeing their master arrive, the skeletons rush to greet Haruto, which makes Haruto reminisce. Apparently after stealing them from the hooded men that summoned them, the skeletons never disappeared, so Haruto had decided to give them a piece of land, and ever since the skeletons have been settling down. Shocked at the efficiency and joy the skeletons have, Haruto reveals that he had given the leader of the skeleton army the name Johnny. Looking around, Haruto notes how there are various other monsters living amongst the skeletons, learning that the monsters were scared off by Flay, and have nowhere to live, so the skeletons offered them a home here, reassuring Haruto that the monsters follow the rules just like everyone else. Since Haruto is here, Johnny offers to show Haruto how much they've expanded on the land they were given. Taking Haruto to their crop field, Johnny states that they don't steal any vegetables, instead growing them themselves, showing off various vegetables. Seeing his skeletons so proud of the vegetables, Haruto realizes that the skeletons don't need to eat, deducing that the skeletons are growing crops for the monsters they let stay. Taking Haruto to see the cattle and wheat productions, Haruto can't help but notice how soothing Johnny's voice truly is, but he does note how annoying it is that Johnny is a bit of a chatterbox. With Johnny asking for any advice on their progress with the land, Haruto tells Johnny to keep up the good work, leaving right away. With the sun beginning to set, Haruto thinks about how he has wasted the whole day with little to no progress, sitting on the bank of a river. Hearing some large thumps in the ground, Haruto realizes that he also has the golem summon, which he had named Gigan. Sitting next to Haruto, Gigan hands Haruto a flower, shyly blushing as it twiddles its fingers. Wondering why Gigan is out here all alone, Haruto asks if Gigan doesn't like being around the other creatures, but Gigan suddenly confesses that it loves Haruto. Thanking Gigan for its lovely words, Haruto begins heading back to the hut, wondering why he has such bad luck. Upon entering the hut, Flay is seen waiting for Haruto, instantly questioning Haruto about this attendant that he's been searching for. Knowing that he can lie to Flay, he instead states that it doesn't concern Flay, swiftly walking off. The next morning, Haruto continues to enjoy his video games, noticing Char wanting to talk to him. Asking her what's the problem, Char reveals that she's been thinking of alternative names for Haruto's masked man persona. Taken to the skeleton villages, Char is amazed that the skeletons are all friendly, offering to name the village Pandemonium Village, the home to the Garden of Demons, which the skeletons graciously accept. Cutting to a snowy terrain, we see several men uncovering a hibernating dragon, happy to have finally found the blizzard dragon. Knowing that the materials from slaying the blizzard dragon will fetch the men huge amounts of gold, they all ready their weapons, but suddenly the dragon takes off. Attempting to stop the creature, the men fire arrows at the dragon, causing the creature to spiral out of the sky, falling into a river only to be helplessly swept away by the ferocious combination of water and snow. Back with Haruto, he's seen with Flay and his father, learning of a mysterious blue dragon spotted on the edge of his father's territory. Since the blue dragon is so far away, Haruto states that it's not their problem, but Haruto's father states that dragons are quite powerful creatures, and if they are left alone, it could easily cause huge amounts of destruction to the land. Since it's quite dangerous, Haruto asks Flay to go attempt to communicate with the blue dragon, prompting Flay to state that she's never heard of a blue dragon, meaning it couldn't have been born in the past several years. Flay states that whilst she was partaking in the demon versus human wars, she had never once heard the existence of a blue dragon. Therefore she assumes that the blue dragon had been hiding away like a coward. Therefore she has no business trying to speak with a coward. As Haruto leaves his father's office, he spots Char eavesdropping on their conversation, personally asking Flay to rescue the blue dragon. Unable to resist Char's adorable charm, Haruto and Flay agree to visit the dragon. With Haruto transformed, he and Flay head into the snowy mountains, able to track down the blue dragon, noting how beaten up the creature looks. At the same time, Flay spots several hunters, who seem to be looking for the blue dragon, prompting Haruto and Flay to immediately head out. Cutting to the resting blue dragon. It's awoken by the cries of hunters rushing towards it, but before the hunters can harm the dragon, Haruto and Flay arrive, standing off against the hunters. As Haruto focuses on healing the blue dragon, Flay unleashes her flames, single-handedly knocking out all the hunters. With the blue dragon now all healed up, it moves closer to Haruto, suddenly releasing a breath of ice, encasing Haruto in ice. Annoyed, Haruto states that the dragon should be grateful to be healed, suddenly realizing that he can hear the dragon's voice. Now with a means to communicate, Haruto asks to know who and how the dragon got here, but is cut off as it wonders why such a powerful demon like Flay is serving a human. Seeing as this is the perfect time to educate the dragon on her master's capability, Flay spends an hour telling the dragon about Haruto's amazing feats, and that Haruto is considered the reincarnation of the Demon King himself. Impressed, the dragon apologizes for not participating in the demon war, which Haruto notes that dragons are considered demons in this world. Apparently, the blue dragon had spent the last 300 years alone in a cave sleeping, until one day an adventurer had visited it, leaving behind a book that fascinated the dragon. In search for more knowledge, the blue dragon left its cave, transforming into a human visiting a nearby town, only to steal books only to return to its cave to read. Sadly, the dragon's cave was discovered, and all the books it had compiled had been burnt, forcing the dragon to flee, forced into an endless cycle of hide and seek with hunters. Hearing the dragon's tragic life, Flay accepts the dragon's apology, accepting it as an ally, and welcoming it to Pandemonium Village. Accepting Flay's offer, the blue dragon offers to serve under Haruto, officially forming a pact and transforming into a human. With Haruto crafting a maid outfit for the blue dragon, Haruto officially introduces himself, giving the blue dragon the name Liza. Seeing Liza and Haruto growing close, Flay gets jealous and reminds Liza that she is Haruto's first servant, but before she can finish, Haruto and Liza fly off, prompting Flay to run beneath them, not wanting to lose her master to another servant. Returning home, Haruto introduces Liza to his parents and Char, asking if Liza could work for them as a maid. Happy to see the Blizzard Dragon as an adorable girl, Haruto's mother and Char warmly welcome Liza, with Char offering Liza to be her friend, flustering Liza. Personally thinking of the pros and cons, Haruto's father is in disbelief that such a powerful dragon is compressed into a little girl, but nonetheless, Haruto's father states that he'll allow Liza to live with them as long as she follows the rules. Taking Liza outside, Flay begins her maid training, warning Liza to take her maid duties seriously if she wants to stay by Haruto's side. Personally showing off her skills, Flay states that she'll be testing Liza today to gauge her skills, asking Liza to clean the outside first. Surprisingly, Liza finishes quickly, making Flay a little worried. Next up, Flay and Liza move on to cleaning dishes, both side by side competing to clean the most dishes. By the end, Flay has accidentally snapped all her dishes, and Liza has successfully cleaned all of hers. Moving on, Flay tests Liza's cooking skills, personally attempting to create her own dish, but Flay accidentally burns her dish. Elegantly, Liza is able to whip up a nice stew, impressing everyone but Flay. Personally serving her own assortment of meals to the family, Haruto's father and mother are quite impressed with these new dishes, all whilst Flay sits in a corner depressed. Seeing a stain on Char's face, Liza helps clean Char's face, prompting Haruto's mother to state how Liza is a quick learner, asking if there are any other talents that Liza may have. Pondering for a bit, Liza mentions how she had read a couple magic books, so she does have some proficiency with magic. Hearing that Liza has combat experience, Haruto's mother officially assigns Liza as Char's personal maid, which Liza happily accepts. The next morning, Liza takes the role of Char's personal maid seriously, waking Char up and taking her to train. Conjuring up a water spell, Liza instructs Char on the incantation, enabling Char to conjure up a fireball of her own. Throughout the day, Liza is by Char's side, helping her study. Several days pass, and Haruto is called by Char, showing off her amazing progression with her fire spell, able to create a huge fireball. Turning to Liza, Haruto realizes that Liza is casting a water spell to wash clothes, all whilst teaching Char, shocking Haruto since Liza is very efficient. Asking if Liza is exhausted having to adopt the routine of a maid, Liza states that she actually feels calm when doing chores and hanging out with Char. Afraid that she may be burdening Liza, Char asks Liza to be honest with her feelings, asking if Liza could not just be her maid, but her friend. With Haruto approving of this friendship, Liza accepts Char's proposal, exciting Char. Seeing as Liza is a fast learner, Haruto realizes that Liza could be the attendant he needs for school, but upon seeing Char and Liza's friendship, he can't tear those two apart. Before Haruto leaves, he realizes that he can simply use his teleportation magic to guarantee that Liza can travel back and forth, allowing Char and himself to share Liza. Cutting to the log hut, Char is seen depressed, as the show she had been watching had just ended, but Haruto reassures Char that a new show will come out soon, and that should replace her boredom. With Char's break over, Liza and Char head back to training, but right before Char leaves, Haruto informs Char that he'll be starting school next week at the kingdom. In shock, Char sneaks off to hold a meeting with her knights, thanking Liza, Flay, Johnny and Gigan for attending her round table meeting. Getting right down to business, Char reveals that she had heard Haruto will be attending school soon, surprising Flay, as she hadn't heard anything of the sort from Haruto. Since Haruto is already so powerful, Flay wonders what the reincarnated Demon King would need to learn from humans, but hearing Haruto referred to as the Demon King, Char gets curious, but Flay realizes that she shouldn't have let that slip, making Char sad that Haruto is keeping secrets from her. Seeing Char sad, Johnny speaks up, stating that Haruto values Char highly, and that Haruto will eventually reveal everything to Char. Hearing this, Char can't help but get flustered, being so important to her brother, only to resume the meeting. Char asks for any ideas on why Haruto would willingly go, revealing that there was one time when she was watching an anime set in a high school, and had asked Haruto what it's like to go to school. Upon glancing at Haruto, she noticed Haruto's darkened face, almost as if he was afraid of even talking about the topic. Hearing this, the others are surprised that Haruto could even be scared of anything, but Char states that she has theories on what things at school could scare Haruto. Listening to her theory regarding the student council being corrupt, Char manages to convince the others that the school truly is a terrifying place, prompting Char to announce that herself, Flay and Liza will head to the school to gather information, and Johnny with Gigan will stay here to make any extra preparations. Before the meeting ends, they all agree to keep their meetings along with the upcoming mission a secret, as they are all doing what's best to protect Haruto. Comedically that night, we see Liza updating Haruto on everything that had transpired during their roundtable meeting, which earns Haruto's gratitude, as things might have been ruined if Char and his servants acted up. Speaking up, Liza asks Haruto if he is truly facing evil forces in the school, but Haruto knows that he should play along so as to not ruin Liza's imaginations. Replying that he does have a greater enemy in the school he'll be attending, Haruto uses the opportunity to ask Liza to be his attendant, which Liza gladly accepts. The next morning we follow Flay and the maids who take care of the mansion, discussing their issues in their life. As the maids begin discussing their worries with their significant others, Flay offers suggestions to simply cut out their significant others, as the maids are clearly too attached to them. Later that day, Char asks Flay about her maid outfit, learning that Flay had to get her maid uniform custom made, to compensate for her huge breast. Spotting Liza flying around, Char asks if Flay could teach her flight magic, prompting Flay to show off her impromptu flight spell, but when Haruto's mother learns of Char wanting to learn such a dangerous spell, she forbids Char from learning flight magic, as Char is still too young. Returning to the hut, Liza asks Haruto to explain his teleportation magic, curious at the type of magic needed to cast such an advanced spell. As Haruto begins explaining the concept of teleportation, Liza realizes that she can't sense any mana being used when Haruto casts his teleportation magic, meaning that Haruto's teleportation spell does not follow the laws of this world, as all spells are meant to use up mana. With it being bath time, Char and Liza spend time in a hot spa that Haruto had constructed for them, teasing Flay, who is afraid of the unusually hot water. With some convincing, Flay eventually hops into the bath, immediately falling in love with the steamy conditions the bath has to offer. That night, Haruto assesses the girls' mana levels, bringing an orb starting with Flay, who has achieved a level of 40 out of a max level of 77, and Liza, who has a level of 36 and a max level of 71. Moving on to Char, Haruto is amazed that a human child like Char, is already level 17 and has the max level of 61, realizing that the Flash Queen Giselette only had a max level of 44. Stating that with some extra training, Char will easily reach her max peak and surpass Flay and Liza, but this prompts Char to reveal that when she was just born, apparently she was able to conjure up fireballs, and this is what led to her mother sealing away her powers. With all the girls measured, they ask for Haruto's level, all believing that it surpasses a 100, but Haruto refuses to reveal his level, as the magic orb still displays he has a max level of 2. With the big day arriving, Haruto's family gather to see Haruto off, checking to see if Haruto and Liza are all set. Haruto states that he has asked Liza is still uneasy about hiding her horns and tails, but nonetheless that should hide the fact that she's not human. Just then, Flay voices her sadness at not getting to be by Haruto's side, but Char is more focused on telling Haruto to have fun at school. Cutting to a grown-up Prince Laius, still bickering with his sister, Princess Marianne, who has barged into his room to show off a letter. Deducing that the letter is just to tell them that Haruto has just left his home, Laius asks that Marianne not waste his time, but Marianne reminds Laius that he was the one that had recommended Haruto for the Royal Academy. Getting flustered, Laius brushes off his obsession with Haruto, as simply needing an equal that can help him get stronger, but he still can't hide the fact that he's excited to show off his new skills to Haruto. Happy to see that Laius's defeat at the hands of Haruto has tamed Laius, but Laius suddenly fires back, stating that he knows that Marianne had also recommended Haruto, even going as far as to personally asking her father for a favor. Believing that Laius is accusing her of being obsessed with Haruto, Marianne yells that she is not in love with Haruto, but that makes Laius back off, as he didn't actually think she was in love with Haruto. Changing topics, Laius asks about the new cult that is at Mariana's school, prompting Marianne to explain that a new church of Lucifria is believed to have infiltrated the school, with rumors that the members worship an ancient demon. What makes it worse is that the church's influence is spreading across the kingdom, with additional rumors of the church planning on overthrowing the existing monarchy. Additionally, several nobles have already joined the church and began funding the church's schemes, one of which includes their mother, the Flash Princess Giselette. Voicing his frustration, Laius wonders the reason for his mother to be siding with a cult, wondering if the collar she had acquired 5 years ago is the reason for her change in attitude. Admitting that he personally fears his mother, Laius mutters that the kingdom is aware that their father the king, and their mother, Queen Giselette, is on bad terms and the church is trying to use this turmoil to their advantage. Throwing out a random thought, Laius wonders if their mother is trying to overthrow their father, but hearing this, Marianne also suggests a crazy thought, stating that she believes that Haruto has the power to resolve all this political conflict. Talking about Haruto, Laius brings up the urban legend of the Black Knight, stating that the Black Knight serves Haruto's family, even able to defeat a dragon. Just then, their mother, Queen Giselette, enters, asking what her children are chatting about. Greeting her mother, Marianne happily calls out to her mother, but before she can finish, Giselette grabs Marianne by her throat, lifting Marianne into the air, demanding Marianne to not mock her caller. Asking his mother to stop, Laius calls out to Giselette, prompting Giselette to release Marianne, brushing off her burst of emotions as a little joke. Turning to Laius, Giselette reveals that she had been eavesdropping on their conversation, asking Laius to grow close to Haruto, in order to learn more about this mysterious Black Knight. When Laius hesitates to respond, Giselette glares at her son, forcing Laius to promise he'll find out what he can about the Black Knight. As Giselette leaves, Laius wonders if he's dragged Haruto into his messed up family affairs, apologizing to Haruto. Cutting to Haruto, we learn that he had personally headed to his wooden hut, instead of heading directly to the capital, planning to use teleportation magic when his school starts, but until then he intends to chill in his hut. With Flay begging to accompany Haruto, Char is forced to interrupt, stating that she'll take care of Flay, as Haruto leaves for the capital. Using his teleportation, Haruto and Liza head to a nearby forest near the capital, as to not reveal Haruto's teleportation magic, but suddenly they both spot a stray bison chasing a carriage, forcing Haruto to quickly transform, heading to rescue the carriage. Before Haruto can reach the carriage, one of the wheels breaks, swerving the entire carriage and flinging a kid out of the carriage. Luckily, a silver-haired woman catches the kid, asking the remaining carriage passengers to flee, offering to distract the bison. Catching Haruto's attention, Haruto watches as the woman takes the bison's charge head-on, but seeing the woman thrown around, Haruto steps in, knocking out the bison. Seeing the woman hurt, Haruto immediately heals her, shocking the woman, as she doesn't sense any mana from Haruto's spells. Just then the kid runs up to thank Haruto, watching as Haruto fixes up their carriage, noticing everyone watching his repairs. Wanting to repay Haruto, the silver-haired woman asks if she can repay Haruto in any way, but Haruto says that the bison was no problem at all, so the woman says she hopes to meet him again to repay Haruto in the future. Taking the unconscious bison elsewhere, Liza and Haruto feed it, sending it back off into the forest. Finally making their way to Haruto's school, Liza can't help but note a strange sense of familiarity with the silver-haired woman. Making it to the school, Haruto spots a crowd, forced to line up. Drained from lining up, Haruto is forced to go through a pile of paperwork, finally able to see his room, realizing that Liza also gets a room to herself. Too socially exhausted, Haruto suggests the head back to the wooden hut, where he won't have to be around other people. Upon using his teleportation magic, Haruto and Liza are greeted by Flay and Char, who have been awaiting their return. Asking about everything Haruto had experienced in the capital, the girls watch as Haruto lays on the couch, clearly exhausted from being around too many people. Speaking up, Char asks if they can eat out in a restaurant, but Flay interrupts, stating that she will personally cook a meal for her master. Pulling Flay aside, Char whispers something into Flay's ears, instantly changing Flay's opinion, who is now all for eating out at the capital. Casting an invisibility spell with his barrier magic on Flay, Haruto helps Flay hide her ears and tail, prompting the gang to teleport back into the capital. Wandering around, the gang settles down for a meal, swiftly gobbling down the delectable meal. Now on to business. Char brings out a map, assigning Flay to survey the south part of the kingdom. Liza the west part and Char with Haruto will explore the east part of town. Curious at Char's reason for having a map, and assigning roles to everyone, Char states that although they're here to have fun, they need to also get used to this new location they'll be spending the foreseeable future in. With everyone splitting up, Char turns to Haruto, revealing that she had planned out a date for her and Haruto. Knowing that this will be an important memory for his little sister, Haruto immediately accepts, visiting various stores, food stands and even buying a necklace for Char, unable to say no to his little sister's wishes. As the sun begins to set, Haruto runs after Char, who accidentally collides with someone. Upon catching up to Char, Haruto realizes that it's the same silver-haired woman from earlier, but is suddenly called out, as the silver-haired woman senses an overwhelming amount of mana from Haruto. Not wanting to get found out, Haruto states that he only has a level 2 mana, prompting the woman to apologize as she rushes off, not wanting to be late for a part-time job interview. As the silver-haired woman runs off, Char mentions how the woman feels familiar for some reason, making Haruto wonder if Liza and Char can sense something that he can't from that woman. Cutting to Haruto in his new dorm room, he speaks with his clone, who has been pretending to be him, revealing that the school requires Haruto to take an exam to gauge the student's skills. Having thought he was exempt from this, Haruto suddenly gets an idea, wondering if he can get expelled if he gets poor grades on the upcoming exams. Sneaking his way to the exam room, as to not have to socially interact with anyone, Haruto is frightened, when a teacher, Professor Polkos, calls out to him, having arrived to watch over Haruto. As they both head into the class, Haruto is shocked by the massive room, already feeling drained from imagining the crowd of people he'll have to be in. Setting his sights on intentionally failing the exam, Haruto is handed the exam papers, prompting him to begin. Looking through the first few pages, Haruto purposely puts down wrong answers, but when he arrives at the barrier section of the exam, he reasons that he should at least get some questions right, easily flying through questions with regard to barrier manipulation. Finally flipping to the final pages of the exam, Haruto notices questions about ancient magic, remembering that he had studied ancient magic at home. Remembering that there was a famous author that had written countless amazing books about ancient magic, Haruto realizes that he may have written too much for the final portion of the exam. With Professor Polkos collecting Haruto's papers, she states that they'll now be heading over to assess Haruto's mana capacity. As they head over to a different room, Haruto thinks about how embarrassing it'll be when they learn of his low mana level, heading into a separate room. Upon entering, Haruto hears a voice, but doesn't see anyone, only to look down and spot a shorter teacher speaking to him. Looking Haruto up and down, the short teacher compliments Haruto's looks, only to introduce herself as Tirieta Lucianal. Tirieta reveals that she specializes in the research of ancient magic, but suddenly scolds Haruto for looking down on her childlike figure. Tirieta states that she'll send Haruto home if he continues to look down on her, but this only gets Haruto excited as getting expelled might not be that hard. Seeing Haruto so happy, Tirieta accuses Haruto of thinking dirty thoughts of her, but admits that she doesn't actually mind it. Getting down to the point, Tirieta looks over Haruto's recent exam answers, suddenly getting serious as she reads through Haruto's responses. Setting up a crystal ball, Tirieta has Haruto hover his hand over it, injecting as much mana as he can, but suddenly the crystal ball bursts, having been overflowing with magic. Looking at Tirieta, Haruto hopes to get expelled for destroying school property, but instead Tirieta and Polkos realize that the crystal ball Haruto had shattered was quite a rare stone, and even still Haruto's mana was able to exceed its capacity. Tirieta reveals that Haruto's responses for the barrier section were simply perfect, and that the ancient magic answers were basically as she herself wrote it. Hearing this, Haruto realizes that the books he read at his home library were written by Tirieta herself, and that Tirieta had intentionally planned this secret assessment to have Haruto be her disciple. Knowing that he had no need to take these exams, Haruto refuses to join Tirieta's research, heading back to his dorm room. Filling his clone in on everything that had just transpired, they both agree to continue to work hard, and get expelled in order to return to a peaceful life. With the opening ceremony finally arriving, Haruto's clone is handed a gun by Char, stating that Haruto is giving it to his clone for protection. The clone states that he had been given the name Haruto C, sharing all of Haruto's memories, but has no magic capabilities. Having sat through the opening ceremony, Haruto C dashes his way back to his room, spotting a group of students, sneaking by as to not draw attention. Suddenly turning around, one of the extroverts calls out to a girl in front of Haruto C, realizing it's the same silver-haired girl he's ran into several times. Calling out once again, the extrovert demands that the silver-haired girl and Haruto C salute to him, revealing himself as the vice president, Schneidel. Not wanting any part in this conversation, Haruto C makes up a lie that he needs to excuse himself due to his stomach problems, but Schneidel gets offended, beginning to chant a fire spell. Bolting off, Haruto C attempts to dodge the fire spell, but is hit directly from behind, satisfying Schneidel, who finally leaves. But suddenly Haruto C nonchalantly gets up, happy to see that Haruto's barrier magic is working, but everyone else is stunned to see that Haruto C has no scratches on him. Trying to pretend as if the fire spell still hurts, Haruto C accidentally taunts Schneidel, prompting the silver-haired girl to ask Haruto C if he's okay. Seeing the two ignoring him, Schneidel begins casting a greater fire spell, forcing Haruto C to pull out his gun, firing a round that intercepts Schneidel's fire spell, creating a huge burst of light, giving Haruto C time to run away. Returning to his room all beaten up, Haruto apologizes to his clone, asking Haruto C to take a break. As Haruto thinks about what his clone had just gone through, he realizes that something is definitely strange about this school. That evening, Haruto is delivered a letter, but as he tries to reject the letter, he learns that it is a duel from the vice president Schneidel, with their family names on the line. As a warning, Schneidel's messenger suggests that Haruto take the fight seriously, as it'll at least not stain his family's name, but at the same time, the silver-haired girl watches from afar. Returning to his room, Haruto begins to brainstorm ways to intentionally lose, but still puts on a good fight, but suddenly spots the silver-haired girl getting into the same carriage as the vice president's messenger. That night, we see the silver-haired girl meeting up with Schneidel, apologizing as she accepts all the blame for his injury. Thinking about his injury, Schneidel gets pissed, violently dashing his beverage at the student that is trying to heal him. Asking if he could retract the duel with Haruto, Schneidel states that he'll only retract the duel if the silver-haired girl gets naked and dances. Swallowing her pride, the silver-haired girl begins to undress. Schneidel and his men get excited, but suddenly Haruto intervenes. Having transformed, Haruto scolds the silver-haired girl for being so dumb as to publicly embarrass herself like this, asking her to go home since he'll take care of this. Turning to Schneidel, Haruto introduces himself as Shiva the Black Knight, stating that they are in his special domain where no one can save him. When Schneidel attempts to attack Haruto, Haruto simply casts a cursed barrier on Schneidel, bringing Schneidel to his knees. Scolding Schneidel, Haruto begins listing off Schneidel's evil doings. These include using his authority as an upperclassman to force people to obey his words, challenging underclassmen to a duel, and finally sexually harassing girls. For those 3 sins, Haruto states that the curse he's placed on Schneidel prevents him from casting any magic and that if he tries to remove it, the spell will inflict pain onto him. As a warning, Haruto demands Schneidel call off the duel, disappearing. Being placed back into his room, Schneidel's men attempt to remove the spell, but upon trying to, Schneidel gets dealt a huge amount of damage, crying in pain, only to swear that he'll hunt down Shiva, the Black Knight. The next day, Haruto is seen cornered by various professors, all dying to get a look at the boy that was able to defeat the arrogant vice president Schneidel. Swiftly leaving, Haruto had gotten his hopes up when he was called to the professor's office, hoping to have been expelled. Running through the halls to get back to his room, but even students begin to recognize Haruto as the rookie that was able to take down Schneidel with a single blow. Not wanting any more attention, Haruto continues to make his way back to his room, but is suddenly stopped by Deshita, who grabs hold of Haruto, asking Haruto to reconsider joining her research lab. Attempting to flee, Deshita refuses to let Haruto leave, offering to chat with Haruto. Sitting down, Deshita begins explaining the 2 different options that students have when enrolling at this academy. First, Deshita states that there is the Knight's course, that requires students to engage in combat with their physical and magical skills, in hopes that they get a position of a soldier or knight under the kingdom's main forces. The second option is the Researcher's course, where students are required to research, develop and apply new magic. Based on Haruto's answers, she knows that Haruto has quite a vast knowledge with regards to ancient magic. Therefore, Deshita states that Haruto should join her in her research with ancient magic. With Deshita trying to get Haruto to sign the membership form, Haruto suddenly spots a student calling out his name, only to lunge at Haruto with a punch, easily pinning the attacker to the ground. Upon further inspection, Haruto realizes the student is Laius, just as Marianne arrives as well. Greeting Marianne, Haruto notes how Laius has put on a good amount of muscle, but nonetheless, it's good to see the 2 again. Asking if Haruto has decided on a course yet, Marianne offers a position in her research lab, prompting Laius to say that Haruto will be joining him. Butting in herself, Deshita states that she herself will be working with Haruto, but Laius recognizes Deshita's name. Laius tells Haruto that Deshita is known for studying magic with no real uses and that she's quite short-tempered, but Deshita proves Laius right when she screams that her research is only for those who know about ancient magic. As the 3 all demand to know who Haruto will be working with, the silver-haired girl interrupts, asking to speak with Haruto alone. Seeing as this is the perfect excuse to leave, Haruto apologizes, swiftly leaving with the silver-haired girl. Having run far enough, Haruto apologizes for dragging the silver-haired girl this far, but she states that it's fine personally apologizing for getting Haruto involved with Schneidel, but she has some questions to ask. Getting right to the point, the girl asks if the Haruto she ran into yesterday that defeated Schneidel and the present Haruto is the same person, forcing Haruto to erect a barrier around them, stopping anyone from hearing their conversation and noting how the silver-haired girl can distinguish between him and his clone. On top of that, she also states that she can sense the invisible barrier he just erected around both of them, impressing Haruto. Asking the silver-haired girl about what she thinks is different about him today, she states that his aura is completely different, making Haruto deduce that the silver-haired girl is sensitive to mana. Listening to the way the girl speaks, Haruto wonders if the girl is a demon like Flay, but the silver-haired girl is insulted when Haruto asks if she's a demon. Seeing her as not a threat, Haruto disables his barrier, asking that the girl keep the fact that there may be 2 versions of him a secret. Before Haruto leaves, the silver-haired girl asks to be his friend, to which Haruto doesn't know how to respond. Revealing her backstory, the silver-haired girl says she was continuously abandoned when she was a child, only barely able to find a home in a nearby church, but even still never got the opportunity to find a friend that she could vent to. Hearing her tragic past, Haruto admits that he too has never had a friend the same age in his life, believing that this could be a first, and that he could probably use her to get out of hassles in school. Asking if the silver-haired girl has decided on a course, Haruto is disappointed that Tiraitia has convinced her to join, but if it means he gets to hang out with his new friend, he'll join too. So grateful, the silver-haired girl smiles from ear to ear, forcing Haruto to hold back as he admits that she is quite beautiful. Officially introducing himself, Haruto tells the girl about his background, prompting the girl to introduce herself as well. But before we can hear her full name, we cut to Char, Liza and Flay all chilling in the hot spring, sad that they get to spend less time with Haruto ever since he started school. With Char leaving to visit Haruto, Liza and Flay chat about their new lives serving under Haruto. Getting deep, Flay reveals that before Haruto, she had actually served directly under the former Demon King. With Liza asking about what type of man the former Demon King was, Flay reveals that the former Demon King was a humble man who valued all demons and monsters, even dreaming of a day where humans and demons could coexist. Thinking about her last moments with her former master, Flay wonders if her master had intentionally lost to the Flash Queen on purpose, in order to reincarnate as a human. Flay suspects that the former Demon King had wished to change the system from the human side, but is still happy as she got to meet Haruto, the man she believes is the newly reincarnated Demon King. Asking what the name of the former Demon King was, Flay reveals that his name was Irisphilia, cutting right to Haruto and the silver-haired girl who reveals her name too is Irisphilia. Noting the really long name, Haruto states that he'll call Irisphilia Iris, which makes Iris happy, as she's been given a nickname by her first human friend. Offering to help Haruto sign up for his classes, Haruto reluctantly accepts, taking Iris back to his dorm room, acknowledging how weird it may seem if anyone were to see them. Upon entering his room, Haruto spots Char, who had been waiting for Haruto's return, but is shocked to see Haruto has brought back a lady friend. Before Char gets any wrong ideas, Haruto states that the girl is just a friend, calming Char, but Char knows that it's not too long before girls surround him. As a compromise, Char states that she'll personally be one of Haruto's wives. Knowing that Char will probably grow to hate him in her teenage years, Haruto lets Char cling to him while she still likes him. Introducing Iris to Char, the three sit down, prompting Iris and Haruto to begin to fill out forms for the classes. Not having any interest in the classes he takes, Haruto rolls a dice to randomly pick his classes, but Char believes that Haruto is so skilled that any class he picks will be a breeze for her older brother. Seeing as Char has high hopes for him, Haruto asks Char to pick classes for him, amazed that Char had swiftly filled in all the paperwork that Haruto was too lazy to. Stunned that Haruto is so easygoing, as to even let someone else pick his classes for him, Iris asks if Haruto has a goal in life, but Char butts in stating that Haruto is already far superior to all students in this academy. Wanting to know how capable Haruto truly is, Iris asks Haruto himself, but seeing as Char has hyped him up too much, he asks Char for her reason for being here. Seeing as she only needed to spend some time with Haruto, she asks that Haruto open the teleportation gate, but before he does, Haruto blocks Iris' eyes, not wanting her to see his otherworldly spell. Just like that, Iris and Haruto have decided on the classes they'll be taking, but Haruto secretly wonders how he'll get himself expelled. Several days later, Haruto and Char wake up, having shared a bed in their wooden hut. Haruto is quite sad, as the first day of his classes has finally arrived, asking Char to summarize what he needs to remember for the upcoming classes. Handing Haruto his schedule, Char states that with Haruto's results from the entrance exam, he's been placed in Class C, ranking roughly in the middle of his cohort. Char also reassures Haruto that his ranking will be updated every exam he takes, but Haruto could care less about his ranking. Checking out the classes that Char had picked for him, Haruto realizes that Char had picked some difficult classes, having believed that her big brother needed a challenge at school. Thinking for a bit, Haruto realizes that maybe with these advanced classes, he can possibly get expelled if he intentionally performs badly, thanking Char for her consideration. Before Haruto leaves for school, Haruto can't help but embrace his little sister, noting how Char is squeezing him quite tight. Teleporting to his dorm room, Haruto leaves through his building, spotting Iris who had been waiting for Haruto. Introducing Liza to Iris, Iris immediately senses that Liza is quite powerful, impressed that Haruto has such a lovely attendant, officially greeting Liza as Haruto's friend. Walking to class, Iris is shocked to hear that Haruto is in Class C, revealing that she herself is in Class A. Heading into class, Iris wishes Haruto best of luck in his classes. As Liza and Haruto watch Iris enter her class, Liza asks Haruto if Iris is a demon or human, but Haruto states that he's not too sure, but what's important is that Iris seems non-hostile, therefore they shouldn't pry too much into her life. Upon entering his classroom, Haruto is immediately stared at by the professor and students, realizing that defeating Schneidel has drawn quite a lot of attention. Starting the class, Class C's professor reiterates how their class is ranked right in the middle out of the 5 rank A, B, C, D and E classes. The professor states that it's easy to climb to higher ranks, but it's just as easy to demote to lower classes, so there will be an exam to gauge students' progress. Hearing that there is an exam, Haruto gets excited as he can purposely fail, but upon getting the exam papers, he's disappointed as the questions are so easy even Char could answer them. Just then Haruto wonders if these easy questions are a test from the professor, who purposely is trying to gauge the attitude of their students. Flying through the papers, Haruto aims to get 60% of the exam papers correct, but purposely gets the remaining ones wrong. Collecting all the papers, the professor states that the class average is 20, disappointed as Class B students should easily get 50 out of 100 no problem. Nonetheless, the professor congratulates Haruto, having achieved a 60 and being the highest ranking in the class, gaining applause from the whole class. Having overthought the purpose of the exam, Haruto realizes that using Char as a reference is not ideal, as the students in his class aren't dumb, but it's just that Char is a genius. To make things worse, the professor announces that they'll put in a good word in order to get Haruto promoted to Class A, making Haruto even disappointed in his actions. Heading to his next class, Haruto immediately spots Laius and Iris, trying to flee, but is caught by the two, forced to sit between them. With Laius demanding Iris to leave him and Haruto alone, Iris fires back, making Haruto uncomfortable between them. Suddenly the professor introduces herself as Oratoria Belcom, an expert in elemental theory. Spotting Laius, Iris and Haruto being loud, Professor Oratoria scolds the three for being so loud, and even having the audacity to take her advanced class only being first years. Recognizing Haruto and Iris as students that Tirieta had recruited for her ancient magic research, Oratoria states that she'll be keeping an eye on the two, making Haruto wonder how Oratoria and Tirieta know each other. Starting the lesson, Professor Oratoria states that she'll be going through the topic of main elements, sub-elements and quantification. Calling Iris to the stand, Oratoria has Iris place her hand over a crystal ball, surprised to see Iris has all elemental affinities but sadly is level 5 out of a max level of 35. Asking Iris to join her research instead of Tirieta's, Iris coldly shoots down Professor Oratoria's offer, returning to her seat. Using Iris's abilities as an example, Oratoria states that everyone capable of wielding elemental magic has a main element and sub-elements. For Iris, her main element is chaos. Professor Oratoria states that there is ongoing research with regards to finding a way to quantify the mastery of a user's sub-elements and main elements. Scanning the stats of Iris, Haruto is impressed by her overwhelming capabilities, being an all-rounder. Moving on to the topic of quantification, Professor Oratoria proposes the scenario where a user has the sub-element of fire and casts a muscle enhancement spell. Given the scenario, Oratoria asks why in some cases does the muscle enhancement spell work better than the other fire spells, singling out Laius. Pondering for a bit, Laius suggests that using a spell multiple times allows the spell to become stronger, but Professor Oratoria states that isn't always the case, given previous research. Hearing this, Haruto mutters that these must be hidden properties for each elemental affinity, immediately catching Professor Oratoria's attention. Demanding to know what Haruto just said, Haruto explains that if the fire element has a hidden property of enhancement, that would explain why the muscle enhancement spell would work better than any other fire spell. Stunned to hear that a mere student is saying this, Professor Oratoria states that a mysterious individual has been sending their school papers regarding the concept of hidden properties, and that these papers haven't been made public, not even for royals. Completely astonished that Haruto had come up with the hidden properties idea all by himself, Oratoria asks that he join her research, but Haruto denies the offer as well. Sitting there, Haruto thinks about how he knows of only one person that may be smart enough to even know of these hidden properties, this being Char. With Iris and Haruto's clone heading to Tirietta's research club, they learn that Tirietta and Polkas are throwing a party, having recruited students for their club. Suddenly Haruto and Iris spot Schneidel, who is here seeking the help of Tirietta, trying to remove the curse Haruto had placed on him a while back. With some research, Tirietta deduces that the curse is a form of barrier magic that is completely invisible, but when magic is injected into the barrier, it causes pain to the person afflicted by the curse. Additionally, since the curse has lasted more than a single day, Tirietta deduces that the curse is not elemental magic, as it clearly doesn't use mana, but the curse is a form of ancient magic. Getting excited, Tirietta suspects that the user is at least level 80, demanding Schneidel to tell them all he knows about the person who cursed him. Hesitant at first, Schneidel states that it was a masked man shrouded all in black, giving Tirietta an idea of the culprit. Turning to Haruto, Tirietta states that she's heard of the legend of the Black Knight that guards his father's domain, but from Schneidel's description, it seems that the Black Knight is here at their school. Cornering Haruto with questions, Tirietta asked what type of ancient curse he used on Schneidel, but suddenly Haruto transformed interrupts, introducing himself as Shiva the Black Knight. Turning to Schneidel, Haruto reiterates that he'll release Schneidel's curse if he calls off the duel with Haruto, forcing Schneidel to agree. Before Haruto can leave, Tirietta binds Haruto, forcing Haruto to scan Tirietta, seeing that she can use earth and dark magic. Stating that her magic is the best of the best, Tirietta is stunned to see Haruto break from her binds, realizing that Haruto has returned the favor, binding her in place. Realizing that she needs to use the bathroom, Tirietta agrees to stop looking into the Black Knight, allowing Haruto to leave, releasing Tirietta from her binds. Moving locations, Haruto, Iris, Tirietta and Polkas officially start their welcome party, but Haruto can't help but notice Polkas gazing at him. Asking Professor Polkas what's the issue, Professor Polkas admits that she feels similar to Haruto, as they are both being constantly dragged into things. Asking Professor Polkas to elaborate, Haruto learns that Professor Polkas actually used to be Tirietta's teacher, but even at a young age, Tirietta was very smart, grasping concepts even Polkas couldn't understand. Eventually, when Tirietta enrolled at the school as a student, Polkas was assigned her attendant, watching as Tirietta went on to develop various spells, being recognized as a saint by everyone. But Polkas voices her frustration, as Tirietta would have had a much easier life if she didn't begin researching ancient magic. Just then, the two are interrupted by Iris, who is clearly drunk, running over to Haruto and flirting with him. Before Iris can do anything else, she falls asleep on Haruto's lap. Setting Iris to sleep, Haruto chats with Tirietta, who reveals that in Iris's mana assessment during the entrance exam, it was discovered that Iris wielded all elemental affinities. Tirietta suspects that Iris has joined that ancient research club as a way to help raise her current level, as it's quite unusual that someone that has a blessing of all elemental affinities would be stuck at a level of 5 given a max level of 35. Cutting to Schneidel, we see him enraged, having been forced to call off the duel with Haruto tomorrow. Not wanting his cowardice to affect his father's name, Schneidel hires a group of assassins, demanding that they slay Haruto and everyone that is in the ancient magic research club. Immediately setting out, the assassins verify Haruto's location, identifying that the three girls are drunk, and Haruto is asleep. Beginning to cast soundproofing and intruder detection spells around the area, the assassins begin to make their way inside their target building. Just then, one of the men bumps into an invisible barrier, identifying that the barrier wraps completely around the building. Trying to carve a hole in the barrier, the men spot a door appearing, prompting one of the assassins to warn everyone that Shiva the Black Knight is the protector of Haruto. With one of the assassins opening the door, they are suddenly pulled in, forcing the assassins to fire a projectile at the door, but the spell is swallowed by the abyss. Now with all assassins on high alert, they realize that there are hundreds of doors appearing around them, each with a Shiva appearing from the doors. Not knowing what to do, the assassins begin to freeze one by one, but with the last moving assassin firing a spell at the Shivas, Haruto reveals himself floating above the assassins, stating that it's pathetic that Schneidel would send assassins to kill students. Teleporting the tied-up assassins to Schneidel's room, Haruto confronts Schneidel, who attempts to deny any connections with the men. But when Haruto shows a recording of Schneidel hiring these assassins, Schneidel begins to panic, running over to grab a syringe only to inject himself with a mysterious liquid. Seeing Schneidel's monstrous transformation, Haruto is forced to block Schneidel's punch, tossed through the room's walls. Disgusted by Schneidel's new body, Haruto wonders what he should do with this Schneidel, but suddenly Char calls him. Having been unable to sleep, Char was simply checking up on Haruto, but now Haruto makes up a reason as to why he's fighting a monster. Now that Char is watching, Haruto begins to gauge Schneidel's strikes, dodging and blocking his advances, noting how Schneidel is stronger than Gigan the Golem. Retaliating with a fortified punch of his own, Haruto does no damage, almost squashed by Schneidel's palms. Using his barriers, Haruto surrounds Schneider's muscular arms, prying them apart to get free and freezing the arms in mid-air. Thinking about how he should defeat Schneidel, Char and Haruto watch as Schneidel rips off his own arms, immediately regenerating them, lunging towards Haruto. Dodging the advance, Char tells Haruto that Schneidel seems to have grown smaller, making Haruto realize that every time Schneidel regenerates, he begins to grow smaller. Flying high up into the air, Haruto calls forth hundreds of swords he had stashed away, propelling them all towards Schneidel. As the hundreds of blades begin to shred away at Schneidel's body, Haruto suddenly snaps his fingers, signaling the end of the battle, as Schneidel has now returned back to his human form. Thanking Char for the help, Haruto asks that Char head back to bed, leaving Haruto to clean up the mess he just made. Cutting back to Haruto C, he awakes from his dream, greeting the transformed Haruto outside, both sharing how grateful their new lives have been, being more eventful than their previous shut-in lives. The next morning, Flay and Liza are seen digging for any information they can find regarding the kingdom. Forced to beat up some thugs, the two eventually find some interesting information, reassembling at Char's Knights Round Table meeting. Reporting what they gather, Flay and Liza state that there is definitely something shady regarding the Flash Queen Giselet, prompting Char to deduce that the evil forces that have corrupted the kingdom have already begun acting. As proof, Char shows Haruto's fight last night against Vice President Schneidel, impressing everyone, having expected nothing less from their master. Seeing as the Vice President attacked Haruto, Char expects there to be even more dangerous people in the school, ordering her knights to be aware and alert when at school. The season ends with Char officially deeming her team the Knights of Camelot, all whilst Haruto secretly observes their meeting, happy to see his friends looking out for him. But Haruto knows that even though he's quite strong, he too should stay vigilant for the foreseeable future. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like and comment.